but the excitement is not going to sustain the business on the hard days. It's not. What's going to sustain the business is making sure that everything is handled correctly and that your business is legit. And that starts with paperwork and compliance.
Taya, really appreciate you coming on and joining me on the Duet NEMT Growth podcast. I think you're a familiar face to many people in the NEMT space. Always seeing your content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc. So thanks again for joining me on here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, James. I truly appreciate it. Make it a good one.
Yeah, we'll try. So I wanted to focus today on, mistakes. Like what kind of mistakes people make in NEMT? What are the biggest things that go wrong and how do we avoid those? Both on sort of like the brand new provider angle and on someone who's been in business for a while, but maybe, still making mistakes they're not aware of.
Absolutely.
Maybe we could start off, could you give us a little introduction on how, you got started in NEMT and like what led you to the sort of advising and consulting space you're in today?
Absolutely, I can, but I always laugh at that because it was not on my bingo card to be an NEMT business owner. I actually went to school to be a teacher. So I went to Morgan State University in Baltimore for undergrad, and I went to Notre Dame University of Maryland for grad school. And so after grad school, while in grad school, I got into working for property management. And so I graduated and I said, okay, am I going to stay in Baltimore or am I going to relocate? And I chose to relocate. I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. And at the time, I was saving money for a vending machine business. But once I decided to move, I said, okay, well, let's take this money for moving money. When I got down to Atlanta, I worked as a property manager at a senior citizen apartment complex. And I started saving money again to start a business. At this time, I kind of let the vending machine dream go because I saw the low profit margins and I wanted more. But at the time, I didn't know what kind of business it was going to be. So I was just saving money. And I worked at this senior citizen apartment complex and I would see my residents sitting downstairs in the lobby for hours. And one day I just asked one of the residents, like, what are you waiting for? And she said, with a little attitude, my ride. Waiting on my ride. So I'm like, okay. And so when her ride finally came, it was just a regular soccer mom van and it said NEMT. And I'm thinking, like, what is NEMT? I didn't go to school in the medical or anything in the medical field, so I had no idea. And at the time, like, I was very new to Atlanta. I hated my job and I didn't feel supported there. So I would secretly use my time on the clock to research what is NEMT. And so the more I got into it and the more I dove into it, I said, you know what? I think I want to do this. I think I want to try this. And maybe like 4 or 5 months into my research, I got fired. And so I took that as a sign. I said, you know what? I got this money saved. I've been doing my research. I think I can do it. Just go ahead and start. And a lot of mistakes were made, James. A lot of mistakes were made. But I will say I stuck in there, I hung it through, and that was 2019 when I started my business, and we are still operating today. So I think I made the right decision. It came
Yeah.
with mistakes and some mistakes that I could have avoided along the way. But hey, we're here now,
We're here now.
so that's a blessing.
Yeah, and how did you get into the space of like, building a community and coaching other people and kind of sharing what you've learned?
Well, I'll be honest. I think now in 2026, there's a lot more of the providers that are out there in the coaching space and offering some great material. But when I was starting, there wasn't. And so I ran into a lot of those roadblocks because I didn't have the right resources to go to, and it was very frustrating. I was taken advantage of. I lost out on a lot of money. And after I realized all of the knowledge that I had gained from the mistakes that I had made, and I saw others online making the same mistakes, I said, no, we can't do this. We can't do this. And, it's one of those things that I don't work with everyone. I don't work with everyone. I'm not the coaching style for everyone. I work with people who are really serious about getting into this industry because I don't want people to make the same mistakes that I did. And so within the coaching space, I'm able to just hear some of the same repetitive mistakes and see some of the same downfalls that have been happening year after year after year with different providers. So
Yeah, sometimes I see those same misinformed questions on Facebook or something, and people are chiming in with the wrong answer, and it's like I'm glad there's people like you putting out content to hopefully steer people in the right direction.
absolutely, thank you. And I'm not a coach that proclaims to know everything. No one can know everything, but I am very resourceful. So if I don't know something, I'm going to make sure that I point that person
Mhm.
in the right direction of someone that does.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's start out with someone who's maybe just thinking about getting started. What are the biggest mistakes that you see them, making if they're going to launch this month?
Don't go buy that van this month. That's the biggest one. People are so excited to get this business started, and they think that the van is the main thing. But that's not the case. The van is just the tool. So you have to have the foundation for the business to utilize that tool properly. And so if you went and spent, I don't know, the market is really jacked up right now, but you went out and spent $30,000 for a van,
Mhm.
and you may not have been able to pay it outright. So you may have some financing going along with that, right? And you're sitting at home and you're looking out the window and you're frustrated because you see the van there, but you can't do anything with it because you don't have the proper licensing, you
Mhm.
don't have the proper insurance, you haven't even started to build your marketing material so that when a company, a facility, or even a broker is analyzing your company to vet it or credential it, essentially, you don't fit the mold. So, that's the biggest mistake. I would say the next mistake is undermining the commercial insurance for this industry. Again, the van is just a tool, but there are other things that go along with getting that van. So once you apply for your state licensing, once you apply for a broker, they're going to ask you for your insurance limits, and they have to match what they're requiring. So if you have a $300,000 policy because that's your state's minimum, okay, well, that may not be the hospital's minimum. That may not be that facility's minimum. That may not be that broker's minimum. And you didn't price correctly. Can you afford it? Can you afford it? And now you're stressed because you're strapped for cash because you put all of it into the van. You didn't consider the commercial insurance, and you're frustrated. You feel defeated before you ever really got started. So
Yeah.
I would say those are definitely my top two for newer providers for sure.
Yeah, I see that all the time too. People come to me, they're like, I'm paying insurance on this expensive van that I financed and I don't have any trips. What do I do? And it's like, ugh, I wish you had talked to me a little bit earlier. Could have pointed you to some resources or something. Um, I feel like, I mean, I would love to get your perspective. Like, you talked about licensing, credentialing, marketing materials. What order would you go about doing things if you were planning to start an NEMT, like maybe later this year, after you've got all your ducks in a row?
Absolutely. Honestly, licensing first. You want to know what all entails for you to be properly licensed in your state and in your county that you reside, because every state and every locality is different. So, for example, in Maryland, they operate on a per county basis. Every county has a different set of rules for an NEMT business because it's considered a transportation for hire company, right? So you have different rules and regulations per county, not only with the state, but also for the county. So you may have gotten one door knocked down and you say, whew, okay, I'm done with that part. No, you still got something else to do. And now you're frustrated again. Well, if you take the time, and I think that's one thing that people don't do because they're excited, and I get it. You're excited to start this business. You've been thinking about it, you've been researching it, and you just know that you're going to kill it. The excitement is great, but the excitement is not going to sustain the business on the hard days. It's not. What's going to sustain the business is making sure that everything is handled correctly and that your business is legit. And that starts with paperwork and
Yeah.
compliance. The biggest word is compliance. Okay. So I would start with licensing first. Then, after you have the
Or
license,
on the licensing side, what's the best way to like figure out how to get started in, random county, USA?
Well, I can tell you it's not to go on Facebook and ask a group of everyone that's in different
Yeah.
states. What you should start is with your local county government. That's where you need to start because that is where you're going to be running your business. Now, every local county government is different as well. So, for here in Atlanta, I have a business license for the city of Atlanta, but I also have my state articles of incorporation for my business. That's what we need. Every state, every county is different. So you want to start with your local government to see what it is going to take for your business to operate legitly in the area that you serve.
Okay, so that's super helpful. What about on the marketing side?
Yes, and let's talk about that because marketing is one of the things that people kind of forget about with their NEMT business. And it's not something, especially right now with how health plans are changing and the benefits are changing. You have to have your marketing to a T. And that includes not only your website, but also your digital footprint. You want to make sure that you have a digital footprint online so that people can easily search you. And the reason for that is because you do not want to leave any money on the table. And I know people get excited for the brokers, and that's great. You have the clients coming in, you don't have to go out there and market for it, that's great. But what happens when a broker loses a health plan? Here in Georgia, Motive Care just lost their entire contract to Verida. So what happens in that instance? You always want to make sure that you have that pool of private clients, and that's where that comes from marketing. Even facilities, even as you grow and you can get hospital discharges, that is where that is going to come from. So you definitely want to make sure that you are focusing on your marketing, and that's really important, James, because like I said, a lot of people forget about that side of NEMT because of the brokers.
Right, and it's easy to get locked in on the brokers, but I've always heard the most successful providers I know say like build your private pay, whether it's individuals or facility trips, and that's what's gonna give you better margins and help you scale up in a safe way that's not dependent on the broker suddenly losing a contract or changing their mind. So
Exactly.
you talked about the digital footprint. Could you tell me more about what people do wrong there?
Well, the biggest thing is they don't budget for it. Marketing costs. Okay. And I'm not saying, I know, when you're starting off one vehicle, two vehicles, you may not have it to spend $300 a month on marketing, right? But don't forget about it. What can you do to market? What can you do? If you can't afford some Google ads, if you can't afford a CRM software, can you put some boots on the ground? Can you carve out some time to get your business known to the community that you're based in? Because if you're in Spokane County in Washington and you haven't been out to visit facilities in Spokane County, they're not going to just come to your door.
Yeah.
So you have to get out there in some form or fashion. Again, you need to be realistic with yourself on what can you provide marketing wise right now. But again, do not forget about it. The biggest thing that people do is skip out on budgeting for it. For sure.
Yeah, so let's talk about. I mean, I think there's a couple things there I want to tug on. First, let's talk about sort of the free stuff, that just putting your business out there side of the digital footprint, like Google Business Profile, Facebook page, website.
Yes.
Um, Talk to me about that.
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very good one as well because you have all of the professionals that are at the healthcare facilities on LinkedIn. And if they're seeing your content, they're seeing your business's content, and they're seeing that you're active with giving information and how your services are running, then they're going to be inclined to reach out to you if they have a need for your services. I think that's one of the things that people downplay as well. Now, I'm not going to say that an 82-year-old grandmother in a wheelchair is scrolling through Instagram looking for
Your daughter might be.
okay, exactly. Her daughter is looking for it. So if you're able to build that page, it's free. Why not utilize that source? Again, I'm not telling people to go out here and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars that you don't have on marketing because you have to use that money for something else. But what I am saying is do not forget to just do it. Just
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, it's like I kept running into new providers who like didn't have a website. We actually Duet started building websites for people, like not to try to make any money off of websites, but just because we want people to be successful. And I can't tell you how many times people come to me and they're like, man, I'm having a tough time getting these facilities to sign up with me. And then they don't have a website, they don't have a Google business profile. I search their name, there's nothing. And it's like, of course, the
Exactly.
facility is going to, wonder if this is a real business too. So I always tell people, like, you don't have to use us. Just like build a website, put in 15 minutes, make the Instagram page, make the Yelp page, make the LinkedIn company profile.
Yes.
And like,
Yes.
yeah, I think there's also stuff on the content side, like regular posts to Instagram, to LinkedIn, to Facebook. You're something of an expert on social media content. What advice would you give to providers for how to get their name out there?
My biggest piece of advice would be to educate. I think when it comes to those free digital spaces such as Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Yelp, Google, educating the public of the community that you serve on your services and what you offer and why they matter is very important. A lot of people, you will be surprised, James, still don't understand what is an EMT,
Oh yeah.
And so, but they have loved ones that need the
Yep.
service. So I think education is very important for the public. Also, being transparent about why your services are, dire. You can't put someone in a Waymo car. And I'm not sure if everyone listening is familiar with what Waymo is, because I know I'm here in Atlanta and I know some of my friends in Maryland, and they're like, what is a Waymo? But it's the autonomous vehicle. You don't want to have your loved one being driven by a robot, So you have to go into depth and explain to them and educate them why your services matter. Also, getting out there to the free conferences. I'm sorry, not conferences. What I'm looking for. Not workshops, free vending experiences.
Yeah.
There are different things that are around communities. Like we have senior expos here once a quarter where, we're able to go and pass out our information and network with others that are from organizations or facilities that are able to direct us to some clients or pass our information on to the clients that they serve. It's going to take work. It is. Owning a business, you're going to probably work harder than you ever worked for a job. But the reward is also bigger than any job you've ever worked as well.
Uh,
So you have to put that work in to make your baby boom. And when I say baby, I mean your business.
yeah. How about on the facility side? Like, what mistakes do you see people making when they're going out trying to get their first contract?
Not planning. They're going out there, they have no business cards, they have no brochures, they haven't called to even maybe try to set up a meeting first. What I've learned is you can't just pop up on these people, okay? Sometimes you can,
Yep.
but most of the time they're busy. They have meetings already scheduled for the day. They have a pile of work they're trying to get done and work through, and they want to get off at the time they're supposed to get off, okay? So to have a random person just impromptu stop by, that's more so putting a dent in their day. So again, it may work for some. I'm not saying it doesn't, because it has worked for me on several occasions. But on more of the rejection side, I would see that time being wasted. I would, for a newer provider or someone that is trying to get into facilities, if you can first try to call and arrange a meeting.
Hmm.
See who's the person in charge. Who is the person that you need to talk to? Because the person at the front desk is not the person that's going to cut the check. Okay? So you want to talk to the person who is in charge of cutting the check. If you're not able to get that person on the phone, if you're not able to get that email or contact information, then you can stop by and drop by, put some material there and let the front desk person, hey, I reached out to Susie and I sent the email. I just wanted to drop by some of our information. But the
Hmm.
problem is that, James, people do not have printed material. So you
Right.
have to be prepared and have the brochure, the card. If you're able to, have an infomercial. I'm not sure what everyone's budget is. Maybe for that provider that's trying to go upwards to more of that 5 vehicle mark. But if you're able to get some type of video production or video marketing for your business, that would be great. You know why? Because we're in the age right now, people don't have time to actually read. Okay, they want to watch
Yeah.
videos. So if you can have all forms of material available, that is great. But a lot of providers mess up by not being prepared.
Mm. And how about on websites? Is there something you see people consistently do wrong? I mean, on my end, I sometimes can't figure out where they're even located when I go to their website, which makes it very hard for Google to figure out where you're located and show your website to people searching for like NEMT near me. But I'm curious what you've seen.
Absolutely. I just see it being very incomplete or too wordy. And you want the simplicity of it because of the target audience that you're going for. You want them to be able to find the information very easily. You want them to be able to know where you're located.
Mhm.
Also, if your pricing structure varies based on the work order details, please do not put a price sheet on your website because it's going to confuse the client when they call you and they see one price and then you're quoting them for another price. If anything, let them have a drop down menu where they can put their details in and you're able to get that and contact them back within a certain amount of time. Or if you have the tools to have an AI bot on there to capture that information and respond in real time, that's great as well. But again, everyone is not able to get that resource at this time. So you have to design what is good for you for where you are in your business right now. And so those are the things that I see in terms of websites because you want it to be very simple for the senior citizen population, for the senior citizens population's daughters and sons that really don't have that much time to sort through your website and figure out where your information is for them to get to the inquiry form or to get to the contact information. They're going to go on to the next company.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
frustrated. Something quick,
yeah.
You're going to go on to the next company. It needs to be simple. It needs to be right to the point, and it needs to have all the information located and easy to find on the website.
And I always wish that more people would put up their vehicle with their, wrap on it. Ideally, them standing in front of it, smiling, maybe loading somebody up, or the
Yes.
team photo with the fleet in the background. Like, I think that just performs so much better than, like a generic picture, like an AI generated picture of a car or like a road or something.
I
I think
agree.
like it just show that you're like a real business with real people who are, the writer can trust to get them there safely.
Absolutely, I agree. I would say for my company's website on our homepage, I actually have our infomercial as our homepage header, and so I myself am getting a client into the vehicle. So yes, I agree with that as well.
Nice, nice. And you mentioned pricing as something people get wrong on the website. Can you speak a little bit more to the ways that people get pricing wrong in general? Because I'm sure you've seen hundreds.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I really need providers to do is to do their market research because I see a lot of providers underbidding themselves. I see a lot of providers overbidding themselves. And you really don't know what you're charging and you can't explain why you're charging it. How much is the gas? How much do you need to pay your drivers? How much is going to make your company profitable? Also, what are the competitors around you in your market area offering? And what makes your company different and stand out? That you can charge more or that you need to be a little bit more competitive and charge a little bit less. You have to be honest with yourselves. And a lot of you all are not considering the fact that the broker pay structure and the private pay structure are two totally different pay structures. You are selling yourself short by trying to retain a client simply by giving them low prices. The broker is the broker, private pay is private pay. It's a different level of service, and so you want to make sure that you are retaining that client, but you're not selling yourself short. So you need to make sure, especially right now with fuel prices surging the way they are across the country, you really need to take a look at your rates to see what are you charging because some of you all are leaving money on the table, a lot of you all, and a lot of you all are missing out on money because you're overpricing yourself. You don't even know what the company next to you is charging and how you can be competitive.
Yeah. How do you figure out what the company next to you is charging?
Well, James, I have my little way I figure out. But what I will say is that, if you can give them a lot of companies, they don't want to just give you their rates over the phone, right? They want to get a quote and see what the mileage is, and they'll tell you what the quote is. Some companies, they will give you what their rates are and how much they're charging. And so if you're able to get that information, you can gather a list and say, okay, we have AI now, right? Put it in Chat GPT. All right. How can I be competitive with these rates, these market rates for NEMT providers in my area? And how can I set myself apart? Even if you have one vehicle and that company has five, Okay, they may not be offering the level of quality that you can offer because they have five and they're trying to juggle all the balls, right? So if you're able to offer a different level of quality, sell that. You have to figure out what your niche is and how you can set yourselves apart from your competitors. But all in all, you do have to do the market research and look around. You do.
Yeah, and I think in addition to like having your friend call around the other NEMTs in the space, which is the traditional way it's done, I think you can learn a lot from the people who call you trying to book. Like people will call if every single person who calls you asking for a private pay ride hears your price and books with you, you're probably underpricing.
Yeah.
You want some of them to say, "Oh, that's too expensive. I'm going to use Uber instead." Like, yeah, that person probably should use Uber instead because they're not looking for a door through door high end on time service. They're okay with just sort of the cheapest option. I do think one way to think about, I mean, one trick you can do that I've heard is, person calls in, you give them the quote, they say great, you book it at your full price. If they call in, they say, oh, that's too expensive, you can say, oh, I have a discount for first time, bookers. That's 10%, 20%, whatever you want to offer. Maybe you have it somewhere on the website so someone really dedicated can find it, but it's not like wildly obvious. That gives you a little ability to sort of adjust the pricing to bring someone in for the first time. Now, you're also, those people who complain about the price are going to be your most problem riders a lot of the time. Like they're more likely to complain, more likely to have issues with your drivers, like all this stuff.
And
So
the driver outside waiting while they're
yeah,
yes.
exactly. And so like, you know, you don't want to chase those people, but when you're just getting started, that can be a trick to sort of help just get some butts in seats, etc. I think maybe one more topic on the smaller provider angle. What's your take on like Google reviews? Do you see people emphasizing them an appropriate amount? Do you have any tips for how to get more? Like, what are people doing wrong?
Absolutely. And well, the first thing is they don't have their Google business profile set up to even accept reviews. So make sure that's set up and you have your account for that. Next, they forget to even promote their page for the reviews. So what my team does for our callback cards, we have a QR code on the back of our card that our drivers, they get an incentive. They get $5 for each review that they get. So that they remind the client to scan that QR code and leave them a review. We also try to get them to remember to put the driver's name in that review so that we can know. But if we got the review, we're able to go on our routing software, see who was assigned to that client, and then give that driver his incentive, her incentive. So that is a good way that I found that increased our Google reviews because we were able to put that QR code back there. If you don't want to put it on your business cards, maybe you can have like a little sign in your van with a QR code to scan for the client so that it's not something that you have to remember for the driver to do and it's just right there on the window for the client to see. But you want to make sure ultimately that you're capturing that and you're reminding them because it is a part of your digital footprint. People read reviews. I know for sure that I read reviews, especially going to a new restaurant or trying a new store. Anything that I want to see that service based, I'm like, okay, let's see what the people are talking about. How do they like it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Exactly. And especially for non-emergency medical transportation, because if you have someone's daughter or son who's in New York trying to book transportation for their mom or their father, and they're out of the state, maybe you're based in Oklahoma, and they're trying to find the best NEMT companies in Oklahoma, and you have your Google business profile set up, and you have reviews on there, and you have good ratings. That's the important part, right? So give good service, and you get good ratings, and so you have that on there. They're able to feel a little bit more confident that, hey, I'm not going to be there. I'm not the one that's going to be able to get him or her dressed that morning, but this company has some great reviews. They say their drivers are great. They were patient. They showed compassion. I'm going to go ahead and book with this company. Don't even know them, never seen them, but I'm going to go ahead and book with them. So yes, the Google reviews definitely matter, and I would advise them to, if you don't want to put it on your business cards, to get a sticker for inside of the van.
Yeah, those are both fantastic tips. Like, can't emphasize enough how much of a difference it makes, like to have somebody with 55-star reviews versus someone with like 5 reviews and a 2.5-star average.
Yeah, yeah. And again, you're not going to please everyone, so
Right.
you get a bad review, don't take it to heart, but
Yeah.
you want to make sure that you're boosting up your reviews so that you have a lot of good reviews that it's like, okay, one bad apple out the bunch. You can't please them all, right?
Right.
But to James's point, if you have 5 reviews and a 2.5 star rating, I am not booking you for my grandmother.
But it's so easy for you to add 45, 4 and 5 star reviews and suddenly like fix that Google business.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. So one more question for you. When you were getting started, like what was the biggest mistake you made?
I bought the wrong van, James.
Uh,
I bought the wrong van. I bought a 15 passenger Ford Transit Sprinter.
okay.
Yeah. And so it had no ramp. It wasn't a high roof. So even if I had the capital to convert it at the time, I couldn't because it didn't have a high roof. And so I was stuck trying to figure out what was I going to do. And so I had this was in the very early stages. I told you I got fired from my job. I had the money saved. I was excited, and I said I'm gonna go buy the van. Yeah. So I went and I got the wrong van, and I had to pivot. I had to figure out how could I make money off of this van because I didn't have any broker contracts. It was very slow getting private pay. Like I was getting some, but it wasn't steady enough to help me pay the bill for the insurance or for the van. And so I pivoted. There are no casinos in Georgia, so I pivoted with taking seniors to
Oh, smart.
casinos throughout the week. And so I was able to build some capital up from there. And then I was able to get a wheelchair van.
Mm,
And so that was when I was able to apply for some brokers and, slowly build up private pay, but also get those broker clients in so I can build up that capital with them as well.
that's clever. I like that.
Thank you. But that's why I put so much emphasis on the van and not running
Right.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was my biggest mistake,
Mhm.
you know? And, I understand the excitement. I do. But the excitement is not going to sustain the business on the hard days.
Right. So I want to pivot a little bit. We've talked a lot about mistakes people make when they're starting out and new to the space. What about people who come to you and they've been stuck at 5 vehicles for a couple years, or they're at 10 vehicles and they're not making any more profit than they did at 5 vehicles? Like, what do you see people doing wrong? Like, what's the biggest thing you see?
Well, the biggest thing that I see with providers at that level is that they got comfortable. They got comfortable and they stopped doing the hard work that they had done in the beginning. What I mean by that is just being active. When you first start your NEMT business, again, you're excited, you have that motivation, and you're answering the calls and you're responding to everything. Then you're starting to make the money, and then you get comfortable. And you wonder why you're not going forward or going farther. You may have put all your eggs into the basket of a broker, and then now they lost. I actually know a provider like that in Georgia right now. And you put all
Oh,
of your
that's so
eggs in the
cute.
broker, you grew with wheelchair and stretcher, and then boom, you lost that contract. You stopped doing the private pay marketing. You stopped going out to the community events. You stopped networking. You didn't update your site. You're not keeping up with the digital times. And so other providers are passing you. They're getting the clients that you could have been getting. And so you're missing out on that. I will say, putting all of your eggs in the basket of a broker and getting lazy with your marketing has been my biggest insight to providers at that 5, 10 level, and they just can't get over that hump. You have to do the work. You have to continuously do the work. And so by doing the work, I mean thinking of innovative ways. If you haven't expanded your hours in 5 years and you have 10 vehicles, you're leaving some revenue on the table, okay? The hospital discharges don't stop. People are getting discharged 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And so if you're not expanding your hours, if you have 10 vehicles, you should be operating at least a 16-hour day. At least. I know you have to sleep. We're not going to push you for 24, but at least a 16-hour day. 4 a.m. to 8 p.m., 3 a.m. to 9 p.m., whatever you can work out, but you have to be innovative in your approach. If you've been doing the same thing year after year after year, you got to shake it up. Business is all
Yeah.
about shaking up, you know?
Yeah, and I love the second shift angle or even third shift. I mean, we've had customers who they were just, basically on spreadsheets, right? Doing everything in their head or on these kind of old school methods, being like, I can't operate more than 10 hours a day. Like it's already crazy enough as it is. Then they get on like a dispatching software. They maybe hire a remote dispatcher from us to cover that 8 hour overnight shift. And suddenly, oh wow, we're suddenly making 50% more revenue overnight because now we're just we're utilizing those like quite expensive vehicle assets way more than we could have before.
And I want to speak to that as well, James, because that's another downfall. NEMT is a very niche field. And so, again, every state is different. And it's been around for a long time, but it hasn't been changed in a long time. So a lot of things that are coming in terms of requirements for compliance and audits, some people are still operating off paper manifests because they started so long ago, and that's just the way they got used to doing things. It worked for them. They don't need any software, and hey, I'm good to go. That's the problem. You do need software. You're not able to grow because you've been doing things the traditional way for so long, but they no longer work for you. And that's why you're stuck, because you haven't learned how to free up your time. Maybe you're still doing tasks that you should have an admin assistant doing by now, but you got so comfortable with doing it, so you're not pulling yourself away to actually go out and do the marketing, to actually go out and do the networking that your business needs to grow. Also, I want to say as well, if you have 5 to 10 vehicles, you should be bringing in revenue enough where you qualify for business funding, grants. So you have to get out there and find those opportunities. You can't find those opportunities when you're still looking at spreadsheets and doing paper manifests. You can't do that. You can't do that.
Yeah, you got to free up some time to go grow the business instead of just sort of being in the weeds all day, every day.
Absolutely.
So you talked about like broker concentration as an issue where all your trips are coming from Motive Care or someone and suddenly they lose a contract. Sometimes I see people who maybe have heard that advice and they're diversified, but they're running the service by having, 2 vans, the driver has the Motive Care app, 2 vans, the driver has the MTM app, 2 vans, they're working with Safe Ride, and the empty vans are like driving across town. What do you say to those people who are trying to sort of use the free broker apps to make things like easier to manage? And does that sort of work out long term?
No, it does not. And the reason for that is because you need to have everything centralized. When it's time to pull a report, when it's time to go back and audit for yourself, I mean, hey, if you go on my Instagram page, you'll see a video I did maybe last week or so where I was talking about I myself was doing an audit because what I had for one of my contracts and what they had for us as a payout did not equal. So I'm going through our trips to see, okay, where's this trip number? Let me see. If I didn't have all that in one space, it would have taken me a long time to get that done. A very long time. And so, yes, the apps are free. Yes, it's because the broker wants to be able to look at it and see it. But guess what? They can do that from a separate app as well, from a separate software as well. And so you're able to have more convenience for your team, not only for yourself, but for your team. If you don't have a dispatcher now or a team manager now or someone aside from yourself now, you will. If you continue to do this the right way, you will. And so you need them to have access to the same things that you have access to so that you can take a step away from the business and work on other things for the business. So having everything in one centralized location saves you time, saves you money because you're not leaving things on the table, and it saves you a headache.
Yeah, you said it. Couldn't agree with more. I want to ask about the people, you said, the broker concentration is one issue. Getting comfortable is another issue, too comfortable. What do you say to someone who feels like, oh man, I'm just kind of stuck. I'm not sure what to do. How do they break out of that?
Well, James, if you feel like that, I'm going to say you're probably at a burnt out stage. And just on a human side, the first thing that you need to do is take a step back. Take a step back, and if you can have a day or two where you're not on the computer, where you're not on the phone, because you really need those creative juices to flow. Nothing is going to flow when you're burnt out, okay? And so when you're able to take that step back, you really have to give your business a true assessment of the health of your business. How much money are you bringing in, okay? Are you utilizing all the vans to the maximum capacity? Meaning, can you multi-load wheelchair clients? Are you able to do stretcher? Do you have the team? How can you diversify your services that you're offering? Another thing that I see as well, and I want to touch on this, is that, if, and I know we've moved on to the higher fleet providers, I'll say, not higher state, higher fleet providers. But for going back to the providers that are getting into the industry, this industry is changing. Okay, so if you want to make money coming in, you have to come in with a van that's going to make you money, and that's going to be a van with a ramp, not an ambulatory vehicle. Okay, so for the providers that have multi vehicles in their fleet, are you using all of your vehicles to the highest capacity? Do you have a van right now? If you're not doing stretcher, do you have a van right now that you can do stretcher? Do you have the money in the budget where you can get the stretcher materials that you need for securement? If so, why haven't you made that move yet? Because that's one of the levels to get unlocked from being stuck. Now you're doing something different. Now you're generating more revenue. Now you're providing more services. Now you can market differently. But you have to have a real conversation with yourself of the health of your business. How much money are you bringing in? How much money can you invest to make more money in the business right now? And what does that look like for your team?
So I'm hearing a couple things there in terms of like next steps if you're feeling stuck. I mean, one, maybe take a step back from the business and think. Two, look for software services, additional hires, sort of take things off your plate so you do free up your time. Then kind of what you just described about ramping up like the service levels. Sort of can you offer stretcher where you didn't before? Hopefully you're already you're doing wheelchair trips. And then finally, like, can you add an extra schedule? Can you start running on Saturdays and Sundays when nobody else in your area is running? Is anything else you'd add? Those are 4 really good tips.
Thank you, James. Oh man, it's so much. Are you utilizing your staff the way that you need to? If it's just you right now, because we're talking about both sides of the providers, but if it's just you right now, what are your thought plans or thought process to break away from that? And again, for my providers with a higher number fleet, you have to think what is going to be your pivot with that fleet. Okay, you don't want to get stuck again with just one lane of the broker. Again, as we said, here in Georgia, Motive Care lost their entire contract to provider. So we have a whole pool of providers that have to pivot either their entire business or they have to pivot their clientele in terms of who they're marketing to. And you don't ever want to be put in a position where you're forced to make a decision for your business out of, inconvenience. You want to be prepared before things happen. And again, you have to have an eye. You have to be tapped into your business and very focused on what your goals are for the growth of the business. That's one thing a lot of people aren't clear on when they jump into this industry. What are my goals for my business? How much money do you want to make with the business a year? How much money do you want to be able to pay yourself? Because as an owner, you have to pay yourself, right? And it has to be separated. So what does that look like? And then you really have to plan that out. And again, excitement is not going to be the thing that sustains the business on the hard days.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot of ground. What's like one thing people could do this week after listening to this video that would, help move their business forward?
The one thing after hearing this that listeners should do after this week is do an honest business assessment. Check the health pulse of your business. Where are you? Where are the gaps? Where are your weaknesses and where are your strengths? And as an owner, I need you to be honest with yourself because we're not good at everything. That's just a common thing with people, not just a business owner, but one person cannot be everything. I know Whitney Houston made the hit song, I'm every woman. I am not every woman, okay? So whatever you're not good at, you have to be honest with yourself about what you're not good at and then delegate that. Because if you try to harness onto that, whatever that task is, it's going to bring the business down, okay? So don't be stubborn, okay? Be honest with yourself about what you're good at and delegate to someone else the rest of the task. But after listening to this, you really can't do anything until you be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself and see, well, dang, James and Tay gave me some great information, but how can I apply that to my business right now? You won't know that answer until you do a true honest business assessment on where your business is right now.
That's great advice. So, in terms of what's next for you, both on the NEMT side and the sort of community coaching side, what can you tell us?
You know, James, this year is very exciting. I'm partnering with a lot of different brands to put content out like this. NIMSAC is coming up later on this summer, and so MJ Reliable, Monica and Jasmine, and I'll be partnering with them for their happy hour mixer at NIMSAC this year. So I'm looking forward to that because I know a lot of people that are here on the digital space with us will be there as well. So I'm
I'll
looking
be
forward.
there. I'll see you there.
Yes, yes, you will be there. So I can't wait to meet everyone in person. I'm really excited about that. But honestly, James, I'm just going where the wind takes me. In the terms of my coaching space this year, I want to put out honest content, true content, connect with people who are serious about taking off their business, and just seeing where the wind takes me.
Yeah, and what kinds of people do you most want to talk to that you feel like you're most helpful for as a consultant?
Absolutely. I am for the people who are either with a van already, who are ready to go ahead and buy the van, or who have multiple vehicles in their fleet and want to scale. I'm not for the people who are still thinking about the industry. I am not for the people who are on Facebook asking, do I need a coach or can I use Chat GPT to start my business? I'm not for those. Okay. But I am for the people who are serious about starting their NEMT business because it's not a game. It's not one of those things that you can play around with, especially when this is going to be one of the largest investments that you ever make in your life. Starting a business is a big investment, not just financially, but with your time. So I'm not here to play with it. And I get people in my DMs and my messages and even my emails all the time that you think you're ready to start a business, but you're not. So that's why I require a consultation call first for anyone that is thinking about or wanting to work with me on a coaching level because it requires real work and accountability.
Yeah, well said. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? I mean, I can drop some info in the YouTube description, but like, how should people find you?
Absolutely. So across all social media platforms, I am on Facebook, I'm on TikTok, and I'm on Instagram at That NEMT Girl. Now on Facebook, I do have a group. So it's a group on Facebook, but the same title is That NEMT Girl. Also, for my website is www.thenemtgirl.com. I'm not sure if I mentioned my YouTube, but it's that NEMT
I've
Girl.
seen it.
Okay, all right, great. So, yes, that's how you can contact me. I do check my DMs, I do comment back, I do check my emails regularly. So, definitely make sure you check me out there. Also, make sure you tune into my lives. I do promote them when I'm having them. I have one coming up next Tuesday. I believe that's the 11th. No, that's the 12th. I'm sorry. May 12th, I have one that will be at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that will be live on TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube.
Yeah, fantastic. Well,
Thank
Taya,
you.
it's been really good chatting with you. We've covered so much ground. This is really good stuff. Thanks again for coming on.
No, James, thank you for having me. And if you all have not checked out James's interview on my channel, make sure you do so. It will be out. I'm not sure. It may be out by the time this comes out, but it will be out on YouTube May the 11th. So make sure you all check that out. It was very informative. And for all of you who are trying to skip out on the software, this one is for you.
Thanks. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.